right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. I am your host, Caleb. You can follow me on the Twitters, the X's, whatever you call it. If you call it X, I judge you, but it is what it is. At CalebVUA. The link will be down in the description. And if you want to opine or send some stuff into the show for consideration, we're getting into the summertime. I need all the ideas I can get. So send that on over either in the DMs or unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. That's also in the description as well. Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we had ourselves a draft this past weekend. A bunch of kids' dreams coming true. Many of them will stink. Some of them will be great. We don't know which ones just yet. But boy, I do love the draft, man. I don't necessarily tune in to anything after round one, basically. I have Twitter notifications on for that, so I know the highlights, if you will. But, man, we got a lot of stuff going on, man. Big shocker in the top 10. A run of offensive players that we've literally never seen before in the draft. And you know what? We got our draft accolades as a result of everything that came together over the course of this weekend, as well as my favorite picks from the draft. And then we're going to get into some headlines. So this one could go long. Yeah, well, I'll try and keep it short, but this one definitely could go long. So without further ado, I am, I'm going to kill this last bit of Coca-Cola because, boys and girls, I just worked 6 straight days, just worked my last of the 6 straight days today, and I am maybe more tired than I have ever been going into an episode, so I need all the caffeine I can get. So I'm going to pound this last little thing, then we're going to get straight into the draft recap stuff. Give me a second here. Wait for it. Wait for it. Pretty tame for the most part, pretty tame. Didn't let out a big old burp this time around. I did right before I started recording. I had a double salvo of just rim rockers that were coming through the old esophagus, if you will. I think that's the one. Yeah, it's the esophagus. I know anatomy. Anywho, let's get into our draft accolades. Boys and girls, the 2024 draft is in. So, with it all said and done, the awards are as follows, and not a single repeat from last year. I don't think anyone really qualified for the Big Brass Balls Award, which was my favorite award last year. The Bills, once again, could have been prime candidates for the Bull and the Cuckoo Bird Award, except for they were on the receiving end of it this time. But no repeats, just once again, on my break at work, going through the draft results, and just coming up with shit, basically. So, the accolades, the awards are as followed. First and foremost, the All-In Award goes to my Minnesota Vikings. We traded up one spot for J.J. McCarthy, only up to number 10. Did not see that coming. Thought it was a chance that he started dropping and maybe dropped even past the Vikings if we ended up getting a different quarterback there, say a Michael Penix. That didn't work out. More on that here in, just a second. But ultimately, waited it out, got all the way to 10 and decided no more messing around with this. We need to get up and get this guy. They go up one spot. They get J.J. McCarthy, give up some draft compensation to the Jets. As a result, Jets obviously take Olu Fashanu, the very next pick. But that was not all we did in the first round, folks. We absolutely mortgaged the future. And going up from number 23 to number 17 after a wild run of offensive players. 14 straight offensive players drafted to start the draft. Longest streak ever to start a draft in draft history. There were obviously defensive players dropping as a result of that, and one of those guys was the person that the Vikings drafted up to take at number 17. Gave up an arm and a leg for, in addition to what we gave up to get that number 23 pick. There's not 2023 picks in a given draft, so disregard that initial part. But going up from 23 to 17, gave up a boatload of picks to do it. The Vikings also drafted Dallas Turner out of the University of Alabama. Absolute freak, super long arms, ran like a 4.3, 4.4 in the 40. Good production this last year, not necessarily the greatest production throughout the first 2 years of his college career, but boy, oh boy, a talented player, a player that a lot of people thought would be off the board first among defensive players. I think the consensus was kind of that he would go 8 to Atlanta, being that they had a glaring need at the pass rush position, but we'll get to them in just a second and their strategy for the number 8 overall pick. The Vikings absolutely went all in on this draft. Got the QB of the future, got another pass rush to put opposite of Jonathan Grenard. Andrew Van Ginkel now slots back into a bit of a reserve role. We got pass rushers for days now, man. Still don't know what the hell we're doing in the middle. You know, cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm a little bit worried about that, but we got a couple good linebackers back behind them, so hopefully it all works out. But this was absolutely an all-in move. Push all the chips to the center of the table sort of draft, especially first round for the Minnesota Vikings. After making this trade, they did not have another pick until the 4th round when they took cornerback Kyrie Jackson out of the University of Oregon. A player I like, by the way. I think he's a pretty good cornerback out there. Just kind of dropped based on, not sure, players just dropped for whatever reason in the draft, but good player at that. But really, I mean, I've gone back and forth on this, honestly, as a fan. First reaction was over the moon, excited that we got, I mean, arguably the best defensive player in this draft, all the way down at number 17. How is this my life? I feel so good. Felt amazing after that pick. Then I think about it a little bit more. The compensation comes out, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot to pay. That is a whole lot to pay to trade up to the number 17 pick after already trading back into the first round to get that number 23 pick. But after further discussion with some people that I like on Twitter, people that I respect, I like this pick. I like it a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. They're going to have to absolutely nail both of these picks to make it all kind of worthwhile. Dallas Turner's going to have to be a player, I'll tell you what. But assuming that is the case, man, that if you get the QB of the future and you get Dallas Turner on the other side of the ball, boy, we're off to the races right now, man. I could not be any more happy with how the Vikings played it in the first round. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was about as aggressive as you could possibly be trading up for that pick, and boy, I am excited. Don't look to 2025. We only have 4 picks now, but I'm excited for this season, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what JJ does in the offense. I am admittedly not the hugest fan of JJ as a player, but also didn't really get a whole lot of opportunity to, cut it loose in college. Was kind of in a very run-heavy scheme with Sharon Moore and Jim Harbaugh there at Michigan. So I assume people watching the tape know a little bit more than me. There's a reason he went in the top 10. I'm really looking forward to that. But there it is. The Vikings get the first accolade with the All-In Award. Congratulations to the recipient. Our second award, the Volume Strat Award. This one goes to the Cardinals, who drafted 12 players. I repeat, 12 players in this draft. I'm not sure anyone else had more than 10. They just kept trading back. A lot of this is residue from that Texans draft pick last year, where they traded up to 3 with the Cardinals, and they had a boatload of draft picks. Headlined by Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 3, and they seemingly got some pretty solid picks after that. As a full rebuild, we all knew what that situation was when he went in there, when Monty Ossenfort went in there, and Monty Ossenfort has approached it accordingly, really injecting that roster with a lot of youth. They got Trey Benson in the backfield, I think in the 3rd round, I want to say. Really going to be a really solid 1-2 punch there with James Conner. I love what the Cardinals did in this draft. You get a bona fide number 1 wide receiver, one of the best wide receiver prospects of the last, 20 years, maybe ever, quite frankly. You get a whole boatload of players after that. Love it. Love the Volume Strat from the Cardinals, which is why they get the Volume Strat Award. Next one up, the I Definitely Know What I'm Doing Award. This one goes to, who else could it go to? Terry Fontenot and the Atlanta Falcons. And this brings us to what happened at number 8. They draft Michael Penix all the way at 8, which I don't think he was going to make it out of the first round. Raiders were probably going to take him all the way up at 13 if he dropped there to him. Either that or they were going to take Bo Nix, but Bo Nix went to the Denver Broncos, which, that's been That's been kind of questioned as well, but Sean Payton really likes the kid. Obviously, the Falcons loved Michael Penix because they took him all the way at 8 after just signing Kirk Cousins for $100 million guaranteed. Terry Fontenot was kind of justifying it by drawing the parallel to the, Brett Favre and Rodgers situation. But, to take a line from the great Josh Pate, kind of an apples to bowling balls comparison. Not the same thing at all. Kirk Cousins just got there. Brett Favre was the greatest quarterback in franchise history and had already won a Super Bowl, and they were looking for a succession plan. It was all the way at the number 8 pick, not like number 23 whenever Aaron Rodgers went, 25 I think it was actually. So very different situation. Also a 24-year-old too, which I don't put a whole lot of stock in the age thing. It is what it is there. He's got a live arm. I like him as a player. I would have loved to see the Vikings draft him. I think he would have been a star with the Vikings. But, hey, it's also one of those things where I like Michael Penix again, but I think of the guys that were in this draft, he's probably the most ready to step in and start right away. And he's going to sit behind Kirk Cousins for 2 years, I think. Maybe 3, depending on how well Kirk Cousins plays. I don't know. This is a pick that does not make sense to me at all. Does not help the Falcons at all this year, for sure. And if it does, you are in some trouble because you have just locked in Kirk Cousins to a massive cap hit next year. And if Michael Penix takes his job, what are you going to do with that? That's a whole different situation there. And even after that first round blunder, they traded up in the second round to reach for defensive tackle Ruko Horooro. I don't know how you pronounce his name. I apologize to that man. Maybe it's Ruke. I don't know. He played for Clemson, and at the same time, Jerjon Newton, who was the best defensive tackle available by consensus, was still on the board. Maybe that was a medical thing. I know he had a foot injury going into the draft, but Washington took him with the very next pick, if I'm correct on that. So I don't know what the hell Terry Fontenot is doing. Maybe the most pre-fired guy out there right now, which doesn't bode well for the current regime. But yeah, that was an interesting draft from the Atlanta Falcons, to say the least. They got Trice. I forget his first name, coming out of Washington. I think that's a pretty solid pick there in the third round. But first 2 rounds, big old head scratcher from him to not get Dallas Turner all the way up there at 8, or hell, get Leatu Latu, who ended up going number 15 to the Colts, very first defensive player drafted in this one. Get a pass rusher. It's the biggest area of need. It helps your team right now. You already have a quarterback. So I guess the justification is they don't think they're going to be up high enough in the future to get another quarterback of Michael Penix's caliber. That's all well and good. It's just, yeah, if I were a player in that locker room, boy, I'd be pissed. I would be pissed that you end up going with a quarterback, a guy that's not going to play for at least a year or two, and not someone that can help your team right away at that spot. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but that is why Terry Fontenot gets the I definitely know what I'm doing award. All right, the Checkers Not Chess Award, flipping that old adage on its head, goes to Sean Payton. He had a little press conference after the draft was over, saying essentially that he was very involved in making the Vikings think that they were interested in J.J. McCarthy and that they were going to trade up to number 10 in order to go get him. So the Vikings trade up to number 10, they get J.J. McCarthy, and Sean Payton's like, ha 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 ha, sucker, I'm just going to take Bo Nix at number 12. Sucks for you. And I don't know. Again, the Raiders probably would have taken Bo Nix if he would have dropped to them. They were pretty desperate for a quarterback, it looked like. But that seems like a guy you maybe could have waited a little bit. Maybe could have traded back to get him. So, yeah, that's why he's getting the Checkers Not Chess Award. Again, former Vikings executive George Payton, I don't know what he's doing roughly 90% of the time up there in Denver. But hey, more power to him. I hope for all the success in the world. Sean Payton's got the guy that he likes. So I don't hate Bo Nix as a player. I mean, he completed a bunch of passes. Sure, it was a lot of short passes, but 77%, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at right there. And he got some good, pretty balls down the field. to some solid receivers there at Oregon. So, hey, going into a Sean Payton offense, which I think they picked up another running back in this draft too. I can't remember exactly which one. Doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt your play as a quarterback. I'll say that right now. He's probably the day one starter, most experienced college quarterback of all time to come into the draft, just, based on the COVID years and all that sort of stuff, starting from day one at Auburn as well. So, I don't know. Hey, maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Checkers, not chess, though, from Sean Payton there, because the Vikings were not going to draft Bo Nix. Well, they obviously knew that. And yeah, we were probably going to trade up to number 10 anyways. So it is what it is there. Next one up, the Grown Man Football Award goes to the Detroit Lions, the host of the 2024 NFL Draft. They drafted as follows: two corners, that being Terrion Arnold and not Mike Sainer still, Enos Rakestraw in the first two rounds. Then two offensive linemen, a safety, and a defensive tackle, all while wearing Dan Campbell jerseys in the war room. That right there is grown man football. They have an identity. You love to see it. It is just one of those things. You just love to see a team stay on brand. Not one wide receiver. I thought they could have used a wide receiver in a deep wide receiver class, but not a single wide receiver. All big boys and defensive players. And, it's probably the biggest area of need on the team. They started playing well down the stretch, but ultimately needed more players out there, and that's exactly what they got. They went heavy on the defensive side. I mean, what's that, 7 defensive players that they got in this draft? So, not bad, very much on brand, which is why they get the Grown Man Football Award. Hell yeah, man. And the Sit and Wait Award, that one goes to the Indianapolis Colts. Leatu Latu dropped all the way into their laps at number 15. Chris Ballard was over the moon with that. He was just sitting there waiting. Not a single defensive player went off the board before he got to him, and I think he was pretty dead set on taking a defensive player at that point, or at the very least the best player available. And he said in the behind the scenes footage, like, hey, we just got the best damn defensive player in this draft, best pass rusher in this whole fucking draft, I think is his exact words. So got that going for him. And then traded up in the second round, ended up getting A.D. Mitchell, who many people had as a first round pick. He had some tough interviews at the combine, apparently. There were concerns about the type 1 diabetes, which, okay, well, I think that's a very manageable thing, but, different teams have different concerns, I suppose. So he drops all the way into the second round, drops right into the Colts' laps as well. He's a guy that they need. He's a guy that complements the skill set of a guy like Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. Kind of fits in there very, very well with what they're doing. You bring in some help for your young quarterback, Anthony Richardson. And ultimately, I think the Colts had a fantastic draft in this one. Maybe not the highest ranked one, but I think the players that they got ended up being a pretty solid group of guys that they ended up bringing in. So the Sit and Wait Award goes to the Colts, and that is that's good for them. And finally, the final accolade, just a generic one, best moment, goes to the Rams. You may have seen this video circulating on the Twitter spheres. They drafted Jared Verse in the first round, defensive end, Florida State, strong as an ox, has a bull rush like you wouldn't believe. He would absolutely launch your 500-pound fat-ass uncle into the Mississippi River if he had the opportunity to. He goes in the first round to the Rams. Obvious need at pass rush now that Aaron Donald is no longer there. You think maybe he's moving to defensive tackle, but not so fast, my friends, not so fast, because in the second round, they take Braden Fisk, Jared Verse's teammate. And here's where the best moment comes in. Jared Verse, obviously hopped on the plane, got there to LA as quick as he possibly could. He ends up being there early enough to come on into the war room while they're on the phone with Braden Fisk. Jared Verse hops on the phone. Him and Braden Fisk have a moment. Tears are shed. It is beautiful. Former teammates staying together at the next level for probably at least the next 4 years. And if they're both really good players, probably even longer than that. Just a beautiful, beautiful moment. It put a lump in my throat. That doesn't usually happen when I see these draft call things. I'm kind of dead inside. It is what it is. You know, self-awareness is a beautiful thing. I'm very aware that I am not very emotionally moved by a lot of things, but two teammates staying together that obviously love each other, had so much success together in college, keeping that core together into the NFL, and both of them realizing what a special moment it is that they're both going to play together. I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it. Just a beautiful moment. Just awesome. Awesome, awesome moment. Best moment of the draft, I would say, by far. So there are your draft accolades. Congratulations to all the winners, and tune in next year when we have our next draft accolades. All right, so let's look at some trends from the draft, shall we? Couple real big themes here before we get into the favorite picks that I had. First, we had a record for most offensive players to start the draft, 14, and most offensive players taken in the first round with 23. The previous record for offensive players taken in the first round was just 19, so they blew that out of the water pretty much. And it was kind of indicative of where the strengths were in the draft. And it was kind of a combination of factors. Not only, it was clearly a much stronger offensive draft than defensive draft. There were a couple good pass rushers in the first round, a couple good corners, but by and large, not a very deep class overall on that side of the ball, which very much contributed. Also, it was a really top-heavy offensive line class. So some of these teams that maybe were thinking about taking a flyer on like a mid-round draft pick at offensive line were like, okay, if we wait until the second round, a vast proportion of the very best players in this draft are going to be off the board. So you had to run an offensive lineman in the first round. You had a really deep offensive draft, and that kind of led to a historic run of offensive players in the first round and to start this draft. So that was a big theme. Obviously, that continued throughout the entire draft, really, especially with the wide receivers. You were getting real value out of like fifth-round picks, I think. Like Ainias Smith, wide receiver over at Texas A&M, absolute dog. He went in the fifth round to the Eagles, I want to say. So you were getting really, really good players really late in the draft. That's just how high quality the wide receivers were in this one. But another big one, as expected, many teams prioritized the offensive line, like I just said there, in the first round because the receiver draft was so deep. And those two kind of played off each other. The prime example of this, which we'll get to here in just a bit, was the Chargers. They drafted Joe Alt, number 5 overall. Very Jim Harbaugh sort of pick. Well, again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But that pick, they might have gone Malik Neighbors at that spot. But you think about it, their next pick is early in the second round. And by that point, all the elite offensive tackles and offensive linemen are mostly off the board. It's more project players at that point in time. So you get your elite offensive tackle early, best offensive lineman in the draft, and then you come back around in the second round and you get a guy in Ladd McConkey that may have been a first-round pick. There was real discussion about a late first-round pick, maybe him going to the Chiefs late in the first round before the draft happened, and you get him right at the top of the second round. So you still get a really good wide receiver that's going to absolutely eat up targets for Justin Herbert, and you get a big-time offensive lineman. We're not done talking about the Chargers, man. They had a fantastic draft. That's very indicative of a lot of team strategies. Like, okay, we can get wide receivers later. Like I said, there's value going all the way down to like the 5th, 6th round even. I mean, Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, not sure how good he is, but he went in the 6th round. Johnny Wilson went in the 6th round. It was a deep, deep receiver class, not so deep on the offensive line. So, yeah, you see teams like the Steelers going offensive line, Bengals in the first round, Jets, Titans, all sorts of teams going tackle, guard in the first round that otherwise might have gone receiver in that scenario. Also, final trend that I saw, QBs went quick. I mean, real quick, and then there was a draft. There was a drought, rather. The whole weekend was a draft. So, what am I talking about? But 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. Very first time that's ever happened in the history of the NFL. History of the NFL draft. Obviously buoyed by that number 8 overall pick by Michael Penix. But then, after that, another QB didn't get taken until Spencer Rattler in the middle of the 5th round. That was the next guy taken. So it went a whole 3 rounds in between another quarterback being taken. He got taken in the middle of the 5th round. So it was a full 3 rounds before another quarterback was taken. I think it goes to show what people thought of the QB class overall. I mean, I guess 6 quarterbacks taken that you're assuming will be starters, not exactly a shallow draft, but a bunch of guys that people wanted to get their hands on early so they didn't have to worry about them. Maybe, take a mid-round flyer on them later in the draft, and that sort of scenario. So, interesting. You don't usually see that. You usually see some in the 2nd, 3rd. Really, you have them sprinkled all throughout the draft pretty much. Sometimes, all the way in the 7th or something like that. But no, this one very, very top-heavy selection. I don't know if it's necessarily a top-heavy draft. All those guys taken in the 1st round were, at the very worst, had mid-2nd round grades. But the quarterbacks got off the board very quickly. And after that, it just total silence. So, with that, those were the trends that I noticed in this draft. With that said, here's my favorite picks. And first and foremost, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up wide receiver, now of the Buffalo Bills, picked at number 33, very first pick in the 2nd round, Keon Coleman, formerly of Michigan State, out of Florida State last year. I love Keon Coleman, man. And not even necessarily as a player. He can absolutely just boss some people, just moss the hell out of them. Just jump ball machine, this guy. One of the best jump ballers in the entire draft. I'm not even talking about his play on the field, though, man. He came in for his introductory press conference in Buffalo and was just dropping bars left and right. He is a hilarious individual, man. Like, he started off his press conference by saying he had this, nice, sweet, yellow, puffy jacket on, asked the reporters in the pool, hey, you know where I got this? Guess where I got this? Someone said, Tom Izzo give that to you? No, Macy's. Then he starts talking about his strategy that he learned from his mom, like he was talking about in the press conference, where you go in, you don't go shopping for coats in October. That's when everyone's going. You shop for them now in the summer. You get a good price on them. I think he said it was like $79 for this coat in the middle of the summer. So he's, a savvy shopper. Just a hilarious way to start an introductory press conference after being drafted. Then he ends it off, is like, okay, any more questions? I think asked the PR person, can I get some snacks? You mind if I go get some snacks right now? PR person said yeah, and then ensuing in that video, just 30 seconds of him just like surveying the scene, kind of rubbing his hands together, picking out what he wants. Eventually zeroes in on the cookies. Like, all right, how many of these should I take? Take 3, he splits a cookie with a reporter that's coming over because it looks like he's about to take the entire tin of cookies. Just a fantastic kid. Also, a quote that came out, I think, before the press conference when he was drafted. He said he went to Waffle House so much that he's got the cook's number saved at the top of his messages. Just a gem of a human being. A gem of a human being. I love Keon Coleman so much. I hope he's good. I really, really hope he's good. Just so we can keep hearing from him over and over again. Just an all-time personality. The people of Buffalo are going to love that guy. Absolutely love that guy. Just a slice of Louisiana up there in Buffalo, New York, eating those damn good wings. He's probably going to have to change up the diet a little bit coming into the pros. Not a whole lot of Waffle House you should be eating as a wide receiver in the NFL, but boy is he's a gem. He's a gem. I feel like I could sit down and talk to that dude for like 2 hours and just still keep on talking. That's my brand of Southern that I love right there. I love that kid. The Bears, getting into a little bit more seriousness here. The Bears got Caleb Williams and wide receiver Rome Odunze, which was to be expected, as many projected. Now, all of a sudden, they have one of the best 1 through 3 receiver combinations in the entire league between DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. I would actually imagine that, Michael Lombardi be damned. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about in this one, saying, oh, we're not even really going to see him in the first year. Here's what's going to happen. In the modern NFL, 3 wide receiver sets are basically the mold. everyone is running 3 wide receiver sets for the most part, and especially when you got a tight end like Coleman out there, you can run a 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end set and be just fine. So there you go. You got your 3 wide receivers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. Keenan Allen works better out of the slot. That's just a fact. He was a chain mover in with the Chargers, and that's the best damn thing he does, and it's why they traded for him, quite frankly, just to provide Caleb Williams with some easy throws. So you move him into the slot, the quote-unquote number 3. You move Rome Odunze out on the outside to the Z spot, in other words, the second receiver, and then all of a sudden you're off to the races because Rome Odunze can do just about anything. He was an outside receiver, a consistent winner on the outside whenever he was with the Washington Huskies this last year and the year before that, quite frankly. So this all works out really well. And they're all receivers that complement each other very well as well. I mean, Rome Odunze provides a good deep threat. DJ Moore can kind of work that intermediate. Also, hit the smoke screen sometimes, get you some yards that way. Keenan Allen moves the sticks, and you got Cole Kmet. You got DeAndre Swift there from last year. Offensive line is still kind of a work in progress, but another year of development under their belt after, drafting a first-round pick last year. The Bears, man, I'm telling you right now, but buy your stock in the Bears because I think they're going to be a playoff team this year. I really do. I think what they've put around Caleb Williams is maybe the best situation that a number 1 overall pick has ever gone into in the history of the league. It is insane to see what the Bears have done. Hats off to Ryan Poles, man. He did a great job rebuilding this team, and it pains me to say because those goddamn Bears are like my least favorite team in the league. My bitterest division rival, I would say. It is what it is, though, man. The NFC North is just stacked this year. Even the Vikings, which they're still probably the lowest ranked roster in the division at this point. They look the part of a playoff team right now. Every single team in the NFC North could conceivably make the playoffs next year. It is absolutely wild how stacked that division is right now, and it's going to be a great fall of football, boys. I'm chomping at the bit. I mean, fast forward me through the next 4 months and change and get me to football season, man. Just get through this damn summer and get me back to football. All right, so despite the consternation from fantasy football nerds, shut the hell up on this one. We're back to the Chargers. The Chargers played it brilliantly in this draft. No two ways about it. Joe Ortiz just knocked it out of the park in this one. They draft Joe Alt in the first round, obviously strategically. Good to get that offensive lineman first, and they got the very best one in the draft at number 5 overall. Come back in the second round with Ladd McConkey, a guy that's going to move the sticks, be a stud out of the gate, I would imagine. He's going to gobble up targets from Justin Herbert this year, make no mistake about it. Then they grab Michigan man, reuniting with Jim Harbaugh, linebacker Junior Colson in the third round, which prompted the hail to the victors from Jim Harbaugh in the war room. The look on his face was concerning. I shudder to think where Jim Harbaugh would be and what he would be doing if he was not a football coach, but good for this world. He is a football coach, and he's not out there just killing people. So he's a madman. He's got a vision, though, and he is building this team in his vision right now. I am really impressed with what the Chargers did in this draft. Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh, materially made this team better. I think with what they did in the draft this year, I would honestly put them just a shade ahead of the Raiders, quite frankly. Maybe that's a little bit of an overreaction. That's an overhyping a bit, but I just love what they did in this draft. I think they have a clear vision of what they want to be and what they want to do in this upcoming season. The Chargers are going to be way, way better than they were last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I just hope I hope Justin Herbert can do some magic, because Greg Roman's not going to do him a whole lot of favors with coordinating the passing game. I'll just say that. Tight end Brock Bowers ended up dropping all the way to the Raiders at number 13 after the run on offensive linemen and quarterbacks ended up shaking out. They just got maybe the best football player in the draft, and I don't know if they necessarily had that in mind. I think he probably would have kept dropping, probably would have ended up getting picked up by the Colts if there was a quarterback available, whether it be Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I think they were kind of banking on Michael Penix being available at that point in specific, but ended up with Brock Bowers. I don't know why. I almost called him Lad McConkey. Not true. Different wide receiver. So, I mean, you just drafted Michael Mayer last year, so that's an awkward sort of situation. But Michael Mayer is a much better blocker than Brock Bowers is. And, more weapons the better for a less than talented QB group that you got there in Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. So, not a bad little move there. Probably could have stood to go offensive line as well, but when you got a player like Brock Bowers just sitting there, you'd be a fool not to take him at that point, especially after all your quarterbacks are done. He was certainly the best available, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does. I hope that they, get the ball in his hands. I hope Gardner Minshew can consistently do that, but Raiders just got themselves one of those dogs, man, a adequate Darren Waller replacement after they traded him last offseason. That's what Michael Mayer was supposed to be, and still could end up being that, but tight end room is stacked right now. Stacked, I say, for the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, Dallas Turner dropping to 17 is the steal of the first round as far as, when he was drafted. Was projected to go 8 to the Falcons in a lot of different drafts. But boy, did the Vikings give up a lot for him. I love the pick. Already went over it. I love the pick. But a lot is riding on him being very good from day one. And I still maintain, I feel like you got to kind of hit on one of those mid-round draft picks to kind of make this whole draft worthwhile, I would say, especially giving up all that you did and kind of mortgaging the future for next year as far as the draft picks are concerned. Still have a first-round pick in 2025, but don't pick again until the 4th round, then only have 2 more picks after that. I think another 4th rounder and then maybe a 5th, a 7th, something along those lines. So yeah, a lot riding on that one, but I love the pick. I am floored at the fact that Dallas Turner was there, that we could trade up to number 17 and go get him. Love this Vikings draft, man. I love what they're doing, and they're going to be right back in the thick of it for a playoff race this upcoming season. I assure you of it. The defense is going to be better. The offense, it's got a high bar to be better than what they were with Kirk Cousins at the beginning of last year, but Sam Darnold, he can keep the ship afloat while J.J. McCarthy is kind of, learning the ropes and then eventually gracefully hand that off to him, midway, early mid of the season. I think we could very easily find ourselves in the playoff hunt. It's a tough division this year, but man, the Vikings really, really hit on this draft, I feel like. I love what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah did. The Steelers, you want to talk about a team that killed the draft, man. The Steelers went ham in this one. First round, they got Troy Fautanu, who kind of got, a really good value pickup. I think he was kind of projected to go way earlier than when the Steelers got him later in the draft. He'll be the starting tackle? It says guard, but I think they might be moving him out to tackle. I'm not entirely sure. Versatile offensive lineman, though. So either way, I think he'll be a big-time contributor in year 1 on that offensive line. Second round, they go with a WVU, West Virginia center. Zach Frazier, dog in the middle as well, so you continue to bolster up that offensive line. And then they get NC State linebacker Peyton Wilson and wide receiver Roman Wilson, the Wilson brothers, obviously the same family there, in the 3rd round. All areas of need, quite frankly. And Peyton Wilson really only dropped to the 3rd round because it was found in his medical evals that he didn't have ACLs. Wild. Last person I heard about that having happened to him was Boris Diaw, and he played 10 years in the NBA. So here's to a 10-year career for the boy Peyton Wilson, I suppose. But yeah, like I said, all areas of need, all good value picks. Hats off to Omar Khan on this one. He really had himself a hell of a draft and really did well for himself. I think Roman Wilson's going to do wonders for him this year. They're probably going to need Darnell Washington to step up a bit. Pat Freiermuth's going to have to get involved in the passing game a little bit more because they're not exactly deep in the receiver core. But Roman Wilson is a great compliment. Good number 2 slot guy to what you get out of George Pickens in this offense. So I love it. Again, another team that really materially made their team much better in this draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They knocked it out of the park in this one. The Chiefs got wide receiver Xavier Worthy. That was pretty much the most predictable move of all time. I think everyone and their mother called the Chiefs were like, okay, This guy looks a lot like Tyreek Hill. We're going to put him with Patrick Mahomes and see if we can recreate some magic. That was going to happen. I mean, basically, once he ran a 4.21, I think we all said, congratulations, Xavier Worthy, you are a Kansas City Chief. That's not the surprising part. The mind-blowing part is that the Buffalo Bills let them trade up to go get Xavier Worthy. They traded back with the Chiefs so that the Chiefs could draft a wide receiver that is inevitably going to take a dull wooden stake, take a mallet, and just cock right through their hearts at some point during the playoffs. I don't understand it. I get that the Bills wanted to trade back. They ultimately got Keon Coleman that I assume they were more than fine with. They got more draft compensation. Ended up having a pretty solid draft. I mean, they picked up some really solid players. Ended up with Ray Davis there, I think, in the 4th round. Really solid running back that's going to contribute right away for them. Got some good players all over the place. Seemingly a solid draft from Brandon Beane over there with the Buffalo Bills. But you just let the Super Bowl champions get the one piece they were missing. I mean, they already got Hollywood Brown this offseason, so that's an upgrade in the receiving core. Rashee Rice played very well. We'll see what happens with the suspension and the legal processes. That'll probably play out over the course of a long time, I would imagine. I don't know if it's going to impact this season unless it gets resolved very quickly over the summer. Feels like it's going to be more of an Alvin Kamara thing, though, where it gets drawn out, goes through this next season, and you're not going to see any sort of discipline coming down on Rashee Rice until the 2025 season, I would imagine. So you got him there. All you needed was one more speedster on the outside. One more. The Bills knew this. You can't just let the Chiefs come up and get someone like that, and yet they did it. It's mind-boggling to me. Congrats to the Chiefs on getting them to do it. I mean, Brett Veach was talking some sweet nothings in Brandon Beane's ear. I'll tell you what. That was wild, though, man. That is absolutely wild. You just simply can't let that happen. But they did. And I assume that Xavier Worthy is going to have like a 70-yard touchdown whenever the Bills inevitably meet the Chiefs in the playoffs next year. That just seems like an inevitability at this point. The Eagles talked about their secondary needs going into the draft, and the draft needs special. They attacked that secondary hard. 2 cornerbacks in the first 2 rounds. They got the consensus best corner in the draft. Well, not consensus. Many people thought was the best corner in the draft in Toledo cornerback Quinion Mitchell. Then the second round, they get the Jackie Robinson of football, depending on who you ask. Cooper DeJean, white boy out of Iowa, in the second round. I hope they don't move him to safety. I hope they keep him at corner because he is a really good corner, and he could be a dynamic punt returner in his very first year. That was one of his biggest calling cards in college. You remember that punt return that got called back because of the phantom fair catch call. Would have won him the game against Minnesota. He is an electric returner. A really good corner on the outside, too. I hope they keep him on the outside. I think that's part of the plans. They have a pretty solid safety situation on the back end there with Reed Blankenship and C.J. Gardner-Johnson back there. But, I really like what the Eagles did there. I really, really like them going up, getting the white Jackie Robinson, getting Quinion Mitchell, really filling out some depth in that secondary room, especially with the aging Bradbury and Darius Slay. Good stuff all around. Love to see it from the Eagles there. Howie Roseman just doing Howie Roseman things, man. Best GM in the entire NFL for my money. The Panthers traded back into the first round at the end of round 1 to get wide receiver Xavier Legette, who I love, by the way. And a lot of people in the North are starting to learn what country-ass black men sound like. I don't want to sound crass there, but if you spent any time in the Deep South and talked to anyone of the opposite racial persuasion of you, opposite's not a great word, a different racial persuasion of you, the black racial persuasion, that's what a lot of them sound like, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful voice, man. Maybe the best voice in the entire draft, Xavier Legette. I can't do a caricature of her because that's racist. But just go ahead, go look up the video of his introductory press conference for the Carolina Panthers. If you're from the North, there's a good chance you don't understand a word he is saying. If you've spent time in the South like I have, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful accent. I love it so much. He seems like just such a bright guy. honestly, if it wasn't for Keon Coleman being as hilarious as he was, Xavier Legette might be my favorite player in this entire draft, personality-wise. He's a cool dude, and I really like the Panthers picking him up. I mean, you can get all the help you can get. You're going to need it for Bryce Young this upcoming year if you don't want to absolutely torpedo his entire career right out of the gates. Give him a chance to at least put in some work. And staying with the Carolina Panthers here, they also snagged running back Jonathan Brooks out of Texas in the second round to fill that need for him in the backfield. They got another Texas guy, Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas in the fourth round. I really like what the Panthers did in helping out Bryce Young. Obviously, they got the guys in the middle during free agency, paid big money for guys like Robert Hunt, a couple other guys whose names are escaping me right now. You protect him up the middle. Hopefully, Ike Ekwonu kind of bounces back a little bit after that just puzzlingly terrible year last year, and you get a little bit more good offensive line play this year. You pick up some weapons there. All weapons that I just said. I mean, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, Jatavian Sanders, all really good weapons. Jonathan Brooks, a versatile back as well, that you can kind of, rely on the check down game a little bit more. They're starting to put some pieces around Bryce Young to kind of help usher him into success. I like what Dave Canales, I like what that intense-eyed GM whose name escapes me, Dan Morgan, that's the guy. I like what Dan Morgan's doing in his first draft as the GM. Also, David Tepper, I think it was after the first round, saw a sign at a restaurant that said, let the coach and GM pick. And then he took some exception to that. He walked into the restaurant, had a weird, I don't want to call it confrontation because there wasn't a whole lot of yelling, but it was like, oh, you think that's funny, do you? Oh, who do you think you are, huh? Oh, okay, yeah. And then he takes the dude's hat off his head, sets it in front of him. Just a real, I'm not bothered, you're bothered. I'm not bothered. Come on, no. None of this bothers me. I just pulled off on the side of the road because I saw a sign. I'm not bothered. That's not what bothered people do. Bothered people don't snatch people's hats. No, that's not. No one ever does that. I'm not bothered at all. I'm just, wondering what you would pick in this situation. But yeah, other than that, solid draft it looks like for the Panthers. We'll see what they do with it. I still am of the opinion that feels like David Tepper is going to find a way to torpedo this thing, but his head's in the right place. I think he wants to win, so he'll pick it up eventually, I guess. I don't know. I'm just not sure that's going to be this year. You'd hope that he learned his lesson after the debacle that it was last year for that team, but you never know. New Patriots fourth round wide receiver Javon Baker. Also, they took Jalen Polk in the second round. Really solid pickup there. That's going to be an easy sort of chains mover type of guy, but I digress on that front. Javon Baker out of UCF, wide receiver out of there. Had the quote of the draft for my money. Quote, "My game is so good, it makes people in wheelchairs stand up." Nothing further to add. That's amazing. That is a bar right there. I mean, the only thing that could possibly rival it was Keon Coleman talking about shopping for jackets and then asking if he could go get snacks after he was done with the press conference. That's a straight bar right there, though, from Javon Baker. My game is so good, it makes people who have lost the ability to walk hop out of their chairs and stand up. No notes. Just poetry right there, man. Ravens got wide receiver Tez Walker in the fourth round after they got Nate Wiggins in the first round. I think they attacked the secondary a little bit more there, too. Just a classic Ravens draft. Got some really solid players. That's great value on Tez Walker, by the way. That's what I'm talking about how deep this wide receiver class ended up being. I mean, Tez Walker, you may remember him last year, had the debacle with the NCAA, eligibility stuff, wasn't able to play until the middle of last season. Ends up playing, but doesn't have, that good chemistry necessarily with Drake May. So doesn't have a fantastic year overall, but really, really solid player. I like the Ravens getting him in the fourth round. It's really good value for a player like Tez Walker. And again, it speaks to just how deep this receiver draft was that a guy like Tez Walker lasted all the way to the fourth round. I think Lamar Jackson's going to like Tez Walker a lot. Another really good deep threat to pair there with Zay Flowers. You got Mark Andrews to work the underneath. Ravens offense still looking really good for this upcoming season. I like what they're doing over there. Colts got center Tanner Bortolini in the fourth round, who I think could be a star just based on his athleticism. I forget what the mark was for 3-cone drill, but he blew everyone out of the water. I think he had the fastest 40 time among offensive linemen, blew all the other offensive linemen out of the water in 3-cone drill. Very reminiscent of the Jason Kelce sort of athleticism measurables that you saw from him coming out of the draft as well. I like this pickup. I think he's going to start at some point this season. Watch out for that name, Tanner Bortolini, coming out of Wisconsin there. I think he could end up being a really solid player in the center of that Colts offensive line. The Bucs got running back Bucky Irving, who is one of my low-key favorite players in this draft. They got him in the 4th round, I believe. I think he's going to be an impact player in year 1. I know they already have Rachaad White there. He's the number 1 guy, one of the best receiving backs in the entire league. But they also pick up Bucky Irving, who is really, really solid as a receiver out of the backfield. I think not quite as good as many people expected, I don't think, just based on the tape. But a really versatile player, a guy that really had a great college career at the University of Oregon. A guy that I thought was really underrated when he was in college, too. I think he's going to be a big-time contributor for them going forward. So, yeah, that's a name to watch right there. Bucky Irving. I think he could be very good in year 1 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then the second to last one, I've got the Eagles. They take Johnny Wilson in the 6th round. Currently slotted as a wide receiver. He's 6'7", like 240. Not the quickest guy in the world because he's 6'7" and 240, so that makes a lot of sense. I don't think he'll stay at wide receiver, frankly. I think he's going to put on 20 pounds and move to tight end. And I think he could be a really, really good tight end. I know they already have Dallas Goedert there, but I think if you move Johnny Wilson to more of a slot, basically tight end role, kind of closer to an inline tight end, where you don't ask him to do a whole lot of blocking. Very similar to Darren Waller in his measurables. An inch taller than Darren Waller. Ran like a 4.5, I want to say. Good speed. Will be an absolute matchup nightmare on linebackers and safeties. Watch out for Johnny Wilson, man. If he stays at wide receiver, I'm not sure he's ever going to end up being that good. But if he moves to tight end, this could be a really interesting project for the Philadelphia Eagles that could pay huge dividends for them going forward on the offensive side of the ball. So that's what I'm watching. And, of course, rounding this thing out, it is the Bears, but I got to give props where the props are due. They took a dynamic player in this draft. I'm talking about punter Torrey Taylor out of Iowa, the team MVP to say the least. I mean, he was, the absolute linchpin of that defense, pinning them deep every single time. And he's Australian, but he doesn't do that Aussie run-up punt sort of form. He does the classic two-step where he just drops darts on the field, man. He is a fantastic punter. The Bears needed a punter, too. The 4th round is very rich for a punter. I mean, that is wild. Usually, if you're seeing specialists, they're drafted in the 6th or 7th round. Like you saw the Vikings take that Alabama kicker. I forget his name, but I apologize to that man. I'll learn your name if you end up being good, I suppose. But yeah, 4th round is wild. Absolutely wild for a punter. But I think he might be worth it just based on how bad the Bears punting was last year. And Torrey Taylor fixes that like that. I mean, it is overnight. You have a really solid punter in there. And I think that's really going to help out their defense as well. I mean, that defense that's ascending, mind you. I think they've gotten some really good players on that side of the ball. They continue to improve. Matt Eberflus is continuing to call the defense's upcoming season. They made a really good hire at the offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron after that Seattle staff kind of disbanded. Again, the Bears. I cannot stress enough. Watch out for the Bears this year, man. They are going to be on the cusp of some really good things. And I think Caleb Williams is going to be, I don't want to give away my recklessly early predictions just yet, but I think he's going to be very much in the running for Rookie of the Year next year, just based on what he is surrounded by and the dynamic traits that he has. I am very much looking forward to seeing what what the Bears do this year. I also don't want to see it happen because I hate the Bears, but I am also a fan of good football, so I'm very intrigued to see what they end up doing. All right, so that is the NFL draft. Took us a robust 54 minutes to get through all that stuff. And we have, not a mountain of headlines, but we got some headlines to get through. So, great draft. Hopefully it was great for the Vikings. Hopefully all the Bears players that got drafted end up being busts so I can laugh at them. I don't think they will be, but it is what it is there. Let's get on to some headlines, shall we? First and foremost, we got a bunch of extension news, so I'm just going to just breeze through them here right quick. Some of these were in the lead up to the draft. 2 Lions extensions of big-time players in the lead up to the draft. First and foremost, we had Amon-Ra St. Brown. He signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with $77 million guaranteed. Well-deserved, locked up their number 1 wide receiver for the foreseeable future. He is just a walking 20 points in fantasy football. He gets nothing but receptions. He wants the ball more than any corner that has ever lined up ahead of him. One of the best jump ball contested catch receivers in the league. Well-deserved. Really good player. Big-time contract. The Lions also extended offensive tackle Penei Sewell. They signed him to, I believe, the richest deal in offensive line history. 4 years, $112 million. Got more guaranteed money than Amon-Ra St. Brown. He got $85 million guaranteed out of that $112. Again, well-deserved. He absolutely helped transform the culture of that Lions offense and that Lions team in general. Moving him to the right tackle, wasn't sure if it was going to work out, but he was about as can't-miss a prospect as you could have coming out of the draft, and he has shown that every single day. One of the best, if not the best, right tackle in all the league. He's up there, right up there with Lane Johnson right now with how good he is at every facet of the game. Well-deserved $112 million extension. The Lions is the Lions, man. The division runs through them this year. Make no mistake about it. Also in extension news, Eagles star wide receiver joined the extension club there. A.J. Brown gets a massive 3-year, $96 million extension. $84 million of that is guaranteed, which leaves just $12 million of that not guaranteed. Just in guarantees, he is getting $28 million a year. Overall, it's $32 million a year, one of the richest among wide receivers in the entire league. I think maybe the richest in the entire league. Another well-deserved. That means, at this point, the core of the offensive line and the top 2 wide receivers for the Eagles are locked up for the foreseeable future. Howie Roseman, getting business done, man. Best GM in the entire league for my money. More extension news. This one dropped today, post-draft. The Patriots locked up standout defensive tackle Christian Barmore, 4 years, $92 million. Low guarantee, just $41.8 million. Tells me that the first 2 years are guaranteed, and then we'll go from there. He is one of the linchpins of that defense, a really, really good defense at that. If they had even a semblance of an offense last year, they'd be, by far a top 5 unit just based on opportunities at that point. This is a really good player, and it's really good to keep him around. This added to Kyle Duggar being extended as well. That Patriots defense, I don't know how the offense is going to look this year, but that Patriots defense is going to be just as strong as ever. Mark my words on that one. All right, so another one that came down the pipe today, Travis Kelce of the Chiefs signed a 2-year extension worth $34.25 million, $17 million of that guaranteed to stay with the Chiefs and make him the highest paid tight end in the league. Essentially a 1-year trial and reassessed after that. I kind of get that sense from the $17 million guarantee. That tells me, you see 2 years, half of the deal is guaranteed in year 1. So first year is pretty much locked up, guaranteed, and then we'll go from there. Makes a lot of sense. Travis Kelce's flirted with retirement over these last couple of years, so you're not sure how he's going to feel after next season. So we're just playing it year by year. You're just giving the team an option to keep him around. He's not going into free agency next year. If he wants to stick around, the team's going to pick up his option for sure. Make no mistake about it. And then probably sign him into another extension if he says, okay, I want to keep continuing to play into the next year. But Travis Kelce's firmly at that point where we're just taking it year by year. So pay him like one of the best tight ends in the league, which he absolutely is, and keep him around until he no longer wants to be there. One of the best players in franchise history. He absolutely deserves it. And especially when you got that kind of chemistry with Patrick Mahomes where you can just keep churning out great season after great season, why not sign him to $17 million a year at this point? The Ravens have they drafted him many years ago. They signed wide receiver Rashad Bateman to a 3-year extension. Weirdly enough, no numbers ever came out on that I saw. So Rashad Bateman still staying around with the Ravens for another couple of years. Hopefully he stays healthy. If he does, that's a solid 1-2-3 between him, Zay Flowers, and newly minted wide receiver Tez Walker over there with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's got to be happy with the way this draft went. Got to be happy. The Bengals, both of those stars, were out of the extension news, so we'll keep it going from here. Bengals stars Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins both formally requested trades on Wednesday. Both are seeking pay bumps and long-term extensions. The Bengals rarely acquiesce to trade requests, though, so we shall see. They're both going to be with the team this year, I would imagine. It's just a matter of whether they sign long-term extensions. Trey Hendrickson is much more likely, I would say, to sign an extension than T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins, they're just like, look, we can't pay both you and Jamar Chase a combined like 50-some million. One of y'all has got to go, unfortunately. And hate to break it to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's going to get paid like 35, maybe close to 40 million when he finally gets that contract extension. So, unfortunately, T. Higgins is probably on the way out the door. But he's just going to have to play on the franchise tag this year, unfortunately. Trey Hendrickson, I think they might get an extension done from that, but who knows? Who knows, man? Certainly not getting traded. I don't think either of those players are getting traded, quite frankly. Quarterback. Now we're getting to the college football stuff. Actually, one more thing in the NFL, just to keep it all kind of, corpus mentis. That doesn't really apply to the situation, but either way, Zeke Elliott. He is returning to the Cowboys after a year stint in New England. That was just abysmal. Not necessarily his fault, but he was in a terrible offense. He is coming back to the Cowboys. Cheap-ass Jerry Jones strikes again. He is all in for this season. That's why he signed a bunch of low-priced free agents and Zeke Elliott to a one-year deal worth up to $3 million. This team's going to be good enough to make the postseason. Make no mistake about it. But unless they nailed the draft, which, hey, they could have done. It's always a possibility. It's going to be the exact same story when they get back to the playoffs. They're going to get to the playoffs. People are going to be asking, is this the year? Dak is so good. This could be the team that gets him over the edge. And then they're just going to falter in the playoffs like they do every single year. You can set your calendar to it. January, there's going to be a lot of excitement from Cowboys fans, and it's going to be just utterly crushed like a grape in the hands of whatever team they're playing every single year, like clockwork. Those damn Cowboys. It is what it is. Jerry Jones is a cheap ass, and he has put them in this situation by the fact that he has not extended Dak and he has not extended CeeDee Lamb. It is what it is, man. It simply is what it is. So, 2 more headlines. We're looking at transfer portal stuff before we head out of here. We just rolling through those headlines, man. We are almost done here. First and foremost, QB Jaden Rashada did what I low-key expected him to do. He has committed to Georgia. Somehow I doubt it's his permanent destination. We'll see what happens with the competition between him and Ryan Puglisi, the other big-time commit there, high 4-star guy that's sitting there behind Carson Beck. But it's a great place for him to sit and develop. Carson Beck is the type of guy that you can learn behind. Mike Bobo is a solid enough offensive coordinator. Got a good pedigree of QBs here over the last couple of years. Don't look at the track record before that, but, a solid couple QBs here over the last couple of years. And you're learning behind a guy that, in all likelihood, is going to be the number 1 overall pick next year. We'll see. You don't usually see a lot of those, strictly pocket passer types like Carson Beck go number 1 overall anymore, but it's kind of a weak draft next year, and he's going to be the best quarterback in all likelihood. I've got him probably to win the Heisman this year if I'm looking at preseason stuff. So it's a good place to learn. I think if nothing else, you're going to get some good tools to kind of develop and learn, get a year to take a breath. You're not getting thrown into the fire like you were at Arizona State. Also, wouldn't have started at Arizona State for that matter. But I think it's a good destination for Jaden Rashada, even if it is only a temporary way stop. I think for this year, for 2024, it's about as good of a location as you can expect to go, unless you're transferring to USC and the QB guru that is Lincoln Riley. Although Miller Moss has a stranglehold on that job as well. And yeah, either way, I like this destination for Jaden Rashada. Hopefully he develops a little bit. He was pretty spotty last season, so we'll see what it works out. We'll see what and how it works out. Former Oregon State running back Damian Martinez. He was in the running for a couple different schools. Came to Starkville during Super Bulldog weekend. Thought that could be a really good selling point for him. Ultimately, it makes probably a little bit better decision if you're looking to compete. He goes down to Miami to play for the Hurricanes, to play for Mario Cristobal. Big time get for Mario Cristobal in this one. They got Cam Ward in the early portal window. They picked up a couple different wide receivers in this late portal window. They get Damian Martinez. That offense is going to be night and day from what it has been in the last couple of years. No disrespect to Tyler Van Dyke, but they upgraded, across the board from quarterback to wide receiver to running back. They have really done well for themselves in this transfer portal, and this is a team that should be vying for a playoff spot this year. They should get at least 10 wins this year. They're probably pushing for 11. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this Miami Hurricanes team does in this upcoming season. Credit to Mario Cristobal. He's built a hell of a program down there, and it's not quite come to fruition yet, but I think you're going to see a classic year 3 pop from Mario Cristobal in that program. He's recruited his ass off in the traditional recruiting trail, gotten some just absolute freak 5-star players down there from the state of Florida, and has really hit it out of the park in the portal as well. I think this is going to be a breakthrough year for Miami. I just really like what they have in there, and I think Cam Ward could very easily vault himself into a first-round conversation, especially with a fairly weak QB draft coming up in this coming year. So, wait and see on that. With that said, though, we're done, folks. We're out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. A little bit of housekeeping here on the way out. I am moving to Ohio next week. Got a new job lined up for me. And as a result, I will not be recording next Monday because I will be coming fresh off my very first day at a brand new job that is very important. So, I am going to be pre-recording the Draft Needs, not the Draft Needs Special. We already did the Draft Needs Special. The Recklessly Early Predictions might be a bit of a shorter episode, but I'm going to record that this week and, probably, put that up next Monday, have it scheduled ahead of time. So you won't miss a beat as far as episodes are concerned, but I'm going to be taking a week off of all the weekly recording, if you will. So I'm probably going to miss some headlines, is what it is there. Outside of that, though, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. Tune in next week for my favorite segment on this show, the Recklessly Early Predictions. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun this year, man. I gotta take a look at it here on Tuesday while you're listening to this and kind of scheme some things up, if you will. But yeah, stay tuned for that. If you want to follow me, I am at CalebVUA on Twitter. And then you can also contact me either via that or via the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to it. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, every platform. Go ahead, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. Then do that one more time, and maybe 15 more times just to get the analytics up a little bit. And I'll be happy. I'll be a happy little boy over here. Outside of that, thank you all so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. And as always, I got basically no clue what I'm talking about. Just an empty head over here for the most part. But one thing I learned this week, China produces more than half of all of the world's apples in circulation. Think about that for a second. More than half of the world's apples come from China. Wild. Not necessarily surprising, but mind-boggling numbers of apples coming out of the country of China at the moment. So, there you go. Y'all have a good one. I will see y'all next week, I suppose. Pre-record. Not draft. I keep saying Draft Needs Special. Recklessly Early Predictions. Tune in. Be there or not. Don't really care. Either way, I will see y'all next week. Deuces.